Reaching the metal door that concealed the now painfully familiar dead-end corridor, opening it and entering took barely 4 minutes. The presence of the pickaxe clearly indicated the purpose of my journey. I had long since realized that the wall opposite the entrance concealed a void, as did the similar walls of the 5 other corridors. If anything had determined my choice of this corridor, it was the proximity of the Yubileyniy to my home. The first strike of the pickaxe seemed deafening to me, and I stepped back to close the door more tightly, trying to ensure myself against any accidents as best I could. Then I returned to the concrete wall and swung the heavy tool again. The concrete gave way reluctantly. Small fragments and cement dust rained down on the floor, leaving only pitiful scratches on the wall. The lantern resting on my duffel bag illuminated a small section of the wall where my jagged shadow danced in a fantastical dance. Things got more fun then. I got the hang of it, and every now and then I had to step aside, protecting my feet from the falling chunks. Sweat ran down my face, but I continued working with the regularity of a clock. Suddenly, I felt something like a draft. Turning around, I confirmed that the door was still closed and instantly realized what was going on. Approaching the wall, I saw a small hole appear in the very center of the crater I'd created. I eagerly pressed myself to it, but saw only darkness. The flashlight didn't help either. It was impossible to see and shine at the same time. Grabbing my pickaxe and sensing how close my goal was, I began furiously striking blow after blow. The hole grew to the size of an egg, then a fist, then a head, then a huge chunk of the wall seemed to vanish, falling somewhere into the outer darkness, and I, almost following it, dropped the pickaxe in surprise as it vanished into the abyss. A moment later, a deafening, echoing blow came from below. When everything died down, I sat motionless for another 5 minutes, huddled in a corner by the front door. It seemed to me the whole city had heard that terrible roar. I imagined a riot police squad descending with orders to capture me, dead or alive, preferably dead, as a scene from some action movie flashed through my mind. In any case, for a long time, I couldn't believe that what had happened hadn't affected anyone but me. Quite by chance, I remembered that in my duffel bag, in a baby food bottle, I had about 150 grams of rubbing alcohol. I'd been seriously preparing. It seemed like the perfect time to use it. I took out the bottle and filled it to the brim with water from the flask, then downed the resulting non-Mendeleev concoction. And you know, I felt better. True, a minute later, I started talking out loud to myself. But that didn't particularly bother me. The treacherous trembling ceased, and my instinct for exploration reawakened. Approaching the newly formed breach, I cautiously shone my light into the darkness. A flickering spot of light appeared on the wall opposite, about 10 meters away. Swinging the flashlight back and forth, I picked out another side wall to my right, as well as the low ceiling, which, judging by everything, was one with the ceiling of my corridor. I didn't immediately have the courage to shine my light downwards, as to do so would require sticking my head and shoulders through the hole I'd made. But that was precisely what was impossible, as I could almost see how, with my clumsy movement, another chunk of the wall slowly and inevitably fell out, hugging it and sending me hurtling into the uncharted depths of the earth. The distance to the floor was about 7 meters. The part of the hall I could see was completely empty, except for the chunks of concrete scattered across the floor and my pickaxe lying a little to the side. To see what was to my left, I tried to lean out a little further and immediately let out a surprised exclamation. I hadn't even counted on such luck. A few meters from the bottom of the hole, directly below me, metal brackets were embedded in the wall, extending downwards. I clearly remember the feeling of elation that washed over me, perhaps due to the alcohol I'd consumed, but that doesn't change the situation. If I'd been a believer, I probably would have offered a prayer of thanksgiving to the Lord, but as it was, I simply began humming Yellow Submarine at the top of my lungs, delighted at how far my voice carried throughout the dungeon. Perhaps my euphoria wouldn't have been so complete and intense had I thought of a simple question I asked myself much later. Who exactly is this ladder leading to nowhere for? Suddenly, I calmed down. My movements became focused and confident. I tied my duffel bag to the sling I'd grabbed and lowered it down, followed by the flashlight attached to the other end of the sling, after which I dropped the sling itself. My windbreaker also ended up on the hall floor when, after an unsuccessful attempt, I realized I simply couldn't squeeze through the opening with it. And finally, to the sound of fanfares ringing in my soul, I found myself at the bottom. "We're here," I said out loud. The light from the flashlight was shining on the familiar end wall, so I quickly bent down, grabbed it, and turned it in the opposite direction. The beam snatched emptiness from the darkness. I almost dropped the flashlight. It was so unexpected and, dare I say it, terrifying. For a moment, it seemed as if a gigantic abyss had opened up before me, and I stood on the very edge, helpless and defenseless. But only for a moment. The flashlight trembled in my hands, and the beam of light slid along the curving wall. A tunnel, a gigantic tunnel, about 10 meters in diameter, descending at an angle of about 30 degrees somewhere down into the darkness. When I came to my senses a little, I carefully examined what my not-so-powerful light source could reveal. Yes, an impressive structure, rough-surfaced concrete walls, metal reinforcing rings, and an ordinary staircase, step-by-step descending, to where my flashlight's beam proved powerless. I didn't think long. After donning my windbreaker, I coiled and tucked the sling into place. Then, slinging the duffel bag straps over my shoulders and slinging the flashlight across my chest, I began to carefully descend. The steps were wide and comfortable. You could walk down them without even looking where you were going. But I didn't want to fall into some unexpected hole, so I descended slowly, holding the flashlight so I could see the stairs ahead. Occasionally, I shifted the beam straight ahead, but all I could see was the tunnel's roof, encircled by metal rings. After passing the 100th step, I began to estimate how many meters I'd descended, and it turned out to be at least 15. At the 100th step, I thought I could see the edge of the tunnel's roof, and after another 10 steps, I was convinced that this was indeed the case, and that ahead, a gaping maw of darkness, as yet unseen, opened up. At the 200th step, the descent ended, and the beam of my flashlight hesitantly rose from the floor. I was standing at a metro station